Digital Foundry is proudly sponsored by the Logitech G935 headset.
Welcome everyone to another DF Direct, another Guerrilla episode, but perhaps a little less so. I'm joined once again by the legendary Audi Sorlie. Welcome.
Thanks.
And this time we're actually standing in Game Realms in Burbank, California, where they were so kind to let us come and film, so we have this cool background here. This is basically going to talk about some of the last few things that we saw on our last couple days of E3, starting with, I think, a lot of people have been asking me, Shenmue 3.
Yep.
So we got a chance to sit down in the Deep Silver booth with Yu Suzuki himself, and he's basically guiding us through the game in a way, at least kind of highlighting things that we should check out.
He got very excited because I guess what happened was that he's been showing us these mini games that are very Shenmue-esque, and the one we started out with was the 1-inch punch, the famous Bruce Lee technique.
Okay, so let's set the stage though first for what so the demo was running on a PC, so 60 frames per second on the PC. Seeing it in person, I think it looks great visually.
Yeah.
There was like wide open fields with tons of grass and flowers, and I didn't see any additional loading screens. Like, we were able to explore around. The controls are now much more modern. You have a dual analog stick movement system. You
much more direct.
Exactly. You still use the right trigger to run,
but
it's not that same direct. It doesn't work like the older games.
Nah, it's just a slight speed increase.
Exactly, and it's smoother. It's easy to navigate tight spaces, which was not the case with the original. And yeah, so it feels great. It looks great. It still has the 4-button icon system.
Yeah, I was happy to see that.
That was back. So I started the demo by running across this bridge, and I was just like looking around, checking everything out.
Right.
I went into a local store, and he had things to sell and things to buy. And so that's just the beginning. I got to see the dialogue system kind of in action.
Yep.
It's still just like the older games, where it sort of pops up in the upper corner, like the little options spread out, and you kind of hit the D-pad direction to choose which one you want.
It's also Corey Marshall doing the voice of Ryo.
Yes.
So it's the same exact voice.
The options menu even had you could choose Japanese or English.
That's right, yeah.
So we had the choice. He went with English. I know Suzuki-san loves Corey Marshall. As
he was very happy about that. So.
And the voice acting sounded about as you would expect. So anyway, we continue the demo. He's like, "Oh, you can train here to up your endurance and stamina." So I did the one, what was it? The punch.
The 1-inch punch.
The 1-inch punch, which is just the against the tree
right.
kind of motion, and you have to time your button press.
Yeah, and I guess some journalists had a little bit of trouble, maybe because it wasn't much latency either.
No,
so I don't know why that was.
Low lag
But yeah, he said in Japanese that basically, some people had trouble with this, but John was perfecting it.
I kept getting excellent.
He actually stood up from his chair a little bit and got excited. So this was fun.
He was visibly excited that somebody was actually not getting stuck there.
Right.
But then, so after that, then, I explored the world some more.
Yep.
And again, it looks great. It doesn't feel constrained right now, in the sense that I was able to wander off just into the grassy fields. It wasn't like on rails. There wasn't the same paths as you had in the original.
No, it was very free.
Freeform and open, and I enjoyed that a lot. And then I had a chance to test out the fighting system.
Yes, and we were very excited about this.
So it's similarly freeform to the original two games, but it feels, so far at least, it feels somewhat more refined.
Yeah.
It plays very smoothly. It's not exactly Virtua Fighter style, but it's
close enough that we notice similarities, and the animation is quite impressive, I must say, for the fighting system. So it looked extremely fluid.
Yes, exactly.
When you were doing different combos just out of your mind, and it actually was reflected in the combat system. You were throwing pretty natural combos in there.
Yep. It does look nice, but it feels extremely Shenmue. Like, this feels like it could have been done on the Dreamcast in terms of the concept. Outside of the larger, aside from the visuals, it feels very Dreamcast era. For me, that's actually enough. I'm just happy to have this, and I still enjoy the original games, but I could absolutely see where some people might come from it and be like, what are these mini games?
Right.
Like, what is this stuff? Why? Not understanding what it's about, and that's fine. I don't think it's going to appeal to everyone. This is very clearly made as this is a direct follow-up to 2. It feels like it's picking up from that world, but it's more open and more beautiful this time. So we'll see how it turns out in the end. But right now, I mean, it had like pretty much all the elements you would expect from a Shenmue game.
It looked like Shenmue, as it should.
Absolutely.
You did also ask about the length of the story and also where the story ends.
yeah.
Yu Suzuki then took an empty water bottle
Yeah.
and went sort of halfway up
Yeah,
and
it was
said,
like
here's
40
where the
to
story
50
ends.
Exactly. 40 to 50%, so there's still more to tell. And he did say...
We're not even halfway
He did
halfway
say
through.
that because they now have all the tools in place,
Yes.
he has a team that he trusts and he's happy with. It sounds like they'd like to continue working on it.
Yes.
And they can probably do it more quickly this time. So we'll see what happens. So I think we should talk about the Genesis / Mega Drive Mini.
We should.
So we spent an hour with this thing. First we walk in, they have a Mega Drive Mini, European one,
Yep.
and an American Genesis sitting on the table, the mini consoles. They even had little, so this is the best part.
We have
walked
to
in,
show this.
There's these little miniature cartridges. I have a couple of them right here. These things, they just pop them into the unit. The flaps on the Mini actually function, so
Yep.
you can put the cart in the machine. It's cute. You know, these are non-functional. They're just little plastic blocks. Although they could do, you know, like some NFC kind of. I
I suppose they could, but they're probably not.
They're not going to do that. So the power button works, and the little slider works. The volume slider works,
Yep.
but there's no headphone
There is no
output. So
output.
that's the reset button works as well.
Yep.
First of all, there's the UI. You can tell this is an M2 product. It's a very smooth UI. This is kind of the best I've seen for the mini consoles in this
By
sense.
far. I mean,
So
this
first-
is
yeah.
one of the best looking mini UIs I've ever seen. I
And
mean, Nintendo's are.
They're fine.
It's fine, but this was just so slick.
So the reason is one, you can choose the language
Yes.
from the option, and that changes what you see on the menu. So when we had English, it was showing American Genesis games.
And the
Had
box
all
arts, everything.
But if you select Japanese, it shows the Japanese Mega Drive boxes.
Yes.
And because I guess it was Super Fantasy Zone, it was published by
Right.
Sunsoft.
That's
of all
the
people,
Sunsoft game.
They actually included the small Sunsoft box.
Yeah,
It's a
so
smaller form factor.
The box art is actually to scale from
Yep.
one another, so it's
And
just amazing.
even better, you can choose whether to view them front cover on or
Yep.
flip them to the side, and you see the spines.
So yeah, it looks like a game shelf.
Exactly, and there's a bunch of sorting options as well. As for the emulation itself, so from what I've seen and heard, it seems to be on par, or you know what, actually it's superior to what I've seen with M2's work on the
Absolutely.
Castlevania collection.
Absolutely.
So the scanline filter was a huge step up from
Yep.
Castlevania collection. Looked very, very clean. You can disable the borders on the side or add them if you like, so you can just have the black image. Seems to be outputting 720p. I need to double check on that. But there was small black borders, but it was scaled properly. There wasn't any pixel shimmer. You know, when you scroll and it's improperly scaled, you get
Yeah.
that shimmer effect, and that was not the case here. It was very, very clean in motion. And everything just looked right. You get to the menu by holding the start button for a moment. It pops up an in-game menu.
That's
you can
right.
save your states. It just works really, really well. And I played a bunch of games on there, and the emulation seemed as accurate as I can say based on the first impressions, right?
Yeah.
It's hard to, I need to go into more depth, but it felt accurate. It looked good. The only problem I had was they had it hooked up to a television with motion smoothing enabled.
Yeah, we
and-
should note though that Sega themselves did not set up their booth,
Correct.
and therefore they had no actual control over the TV settings, and they could not change it.
They tried to help actually,
Yeah.
and they got the remote, but everything was locked, and they said this was all outsider control, and
Yeah.
they were annoyed by it too.
Yeah,
So there was latency as a result.
almost a full second. of
Yeah, it
latency.
was pretty sluggish as a result.
Yeah.
But apparently M2's quoted some numbers. They said like it was maybe like 2 frames of lag
Yes,
or
that's
something.
what they said.
I think he got a quote from M2 on that.
Yeah, he actually texted them.
Yeah. So not only that, they said that M2 had been sending them firmware updates right up until the day the show started, as they were very afraid of making sure that it was very polished for people
Yeah.
to play. And you can feel that effort. Right now it feels complete to
Yeah,
me.
absolutely.
So, you know, I love the more ambitious solutions as well. But these little mini consoles are fun, and they're fun to have, and this one actually does seem like a step up. Then there's the controller, I guess.
Yep.
So the American and European model only comes with the 3-button pad. It felt good, but different. Just a bit. Like the buttons are good enough. Actually, they're pretty good. They're better than my worn 3-button controllers. But the D-pad, I'd say it's like 80 to 90% there. It's a little bit off, but it's very close.
I don't know. Yeah, it was a little bit more stiff, I felt.
Yeah, that's kind of right. But again, it's new. The 3 buttons we've been using are very old.
Yeah, that's right.
So they're kind of worn in.
They have like 30 years of use now to them.
So there's that to consider. But I guess, so things got more interesting for us because Miyazaki-san, who's been with Sega for a long time, was
28 years.
28 years. He was there to answer questions, and he's worked on a lot of products, like Nights into Dreams.
Yeah,
I think,
he started his career with Nights into Dreams, I believe. And
something like that.
I mean, he had been there before as a product manager or something, but he started his career with Night into Dreams, and I recognized him when he came in the door after we actually started our presentation.
So initially he was a little bit just quiet, sitting in the back, not looking too happy, and then somehow we started...
I shouldn't say happy, but he looked tired. He was probably jet lagged.
Yes, exactly. He seemed friendly but very tired, and I can feel for him.
Yes, right now.
So we were browsing the game shelves in the virtual screen, and I brought up the Japanese Mega Drive ones, and I was reading through the titles, and he was like surprised that we were reading that fine.
Yeah.
And then I talked to him and handed him my phone with an image of the actual Japanese Mega Drive games that I own, just for fun. And he like lit up. He's like,
he stood up.
He actually stood up and he's like, "You have Time Dominator?"
Yes.
And I told him how much it was, and he's just like, "How did you get that?" And then he started going off on a tangent about how they really wanted to get Victo Kai games in there, like Battlemania 2.
Battlemania, Time Dominator, yeah.
Time Dominator, but unfortunately it's basically, they're all owned by a holdings company.
Yeah, it's impossible.
So it's kind of impossible to get. So that's... And then somehow we mentioned how we met with Alexei Pajitnov earlier in the week, the creator of Tetris. And when he heard that, he almost leaped out of his chair and he's like, "How come he wasn't here? I want to meet him so bad." And he showed us a video on his phone, and he is so passionate about Tetris. He started talking about all the little details in the Sega version of Tetris, and why they had not issues, but it took negotiations to get the Tetris company to be okay with releasing a version of Tetris that doesn't really follow the modern Tetris rules.
Yeah, it is not up to standard with the modern Tetris guidelines, which is why the Tetris company needed to kind of look over this and make sure that it's still okay.
Exactly, and it was. They approved it. And so we're sitting there, I'm playing through a game of Tetris that's starting to get super fast, and everybody's into it. He's into it. He's like commenting. We're just having a blast back there. And so we ended up just talking with him about all kinds of Mega Drive stuff. And
we went through Sega history that night.
That was great.
It was great, yeah.
So that was a very nice interview there. Well, it wasn't really an interview. He's more there to just answer questions. And answer them, he did.
We need to mention the menu music done by Yuzo Koshiro.
Yes, that's right.
And actually done on the old hardware that he made. Bare Knuckle 2, with Streets of Rage 2 on. It sounds amazing.
It did.
And the Miyazaki-san was very happy to learn that we recognized this, knew about him, knew about his work. So they're definitely keeping this product authentically Sega in every possible way.
That's right, that's right. I want to quickly mention Doom Eternal again.
Right.
I talked about this in the last video, but this time I got to actually play it on a beefy PC with a mouse and keyboard rather than Stadia. Quite frankly, the difference is night and day. Like, it's not even... This was an actual 4K monitor running at a high frame rate.
Yep.
Tremendous game. Just amazing. I got much further in this demo.
Yeah.
It didn't crash or anything. It just looked so good. Running at 4K, it was locked frame rate, very, very stable.
Never really dropped.
And yeah, the mechanics really start to make more sense. And all those new things like the flame shot, you still have your chainsaw, and chaining together everything and like being acrobatic around the environment. They sort of increase the intensity a lot and the challenge. I died a few times actually.
Yeah.
But I kept at it. It's very engaging to figure out the strategy and just sort of like push yourself, understand how the game flows, and just like making your way through it. And it was, I feel like the level design is a step up from
it's much more
2016.
Yeah, it's much more strategic now. Like you have to actually think about what you do rather than just being a powerful Doomslayer.
There was that in the original.
There is that.
But this is definitely a step up from that, especially with how vertical the stages are. You're like all over the place.
Yeah, because it comes from everywhere now. I could not even keep track of what was happening.
Yeah, so it plays great, it looks great.
Sounds great.
This is it sounds great too. Of course, Mick Gordon's working there and the sound effects and and also the shotgun with the grappling hook.
Right.
Chef's kiss. That's just superb.
That day, they also announced the RTX support for Doom,
Yes,
correct?
we didn't get to see that,
No.
but I'm sure that's going to look great. You're probably not going to get 4K 60
Maybe
with
not.
RTX, but it might be worth it. So very excited to see that. So then the next thing I want to talk about, Oddworld Soulstorm.
Right.
So I've always enjoyed the Oddworld games. It's kind of like an evolution of the, Another World flashback style of game. Good stuff. New and Tasty comes out a few years back. Sort of a reimagining of the original. I like it. It's good. Soulstorm is kind of a reimagining of Oddworld Abe's Exodus, but taken to an extreme degree that I did not expect.
Really?
This is the most systems-driven, like, platform action puzzle whatever kind of game that I've seen. Like, you remember the tanker from Metal Gear Solid 2?
Of course.
You could run through that a million times and you always have stuff to mess with. The AI was fun to play with. It just felt like a toy box. That's what this is now. Like, you can pick up items, you can combine just about any random items, you can hide in lockers, there's a stealth mode, you can hang from ledges and take things out, you can command your Mudokons around, you have all kinds of tools you can use, you can possess enemies. Materials react based on the physical properties, so like wood will burn. If you light it on fire, it burns. Metal reacts differently. Some structures can be toppled in a certain way. All the physics are there. The AI is significantly more interesting and advanced. And on top of that, it's still 2.5D, but they have these layers now. So like when I was running around in the beginning solving stuff, you actually see multiple layers of the level behind you. So there's the net one behind that, and then another one, and then another one. And there's no drawing on it. You see all the Mudokons and other enemies, like it's all active. The AI is always active. You see it all happening behind you. And not only that, like production line, like they're working on production lines, right? You rescue them. When you do that, it changes the efficiency of the line, which raises alarms and it causes the enemies to react differently and investigate. So like the whole thing is like this gigantic, super complex system that you can manipulate with Abe. And the goal is still the same as always, rescue Mudokons, get to the end. But it's so much larger and more complex, and it blew me away. Like I really can't believe how much fun and just how interesting it was. It felt remarkable to play. It's very, very fresh. And not only that, it's a Unity game.
Right.
But it's like, it is such a step up from any other thing I've seen running on the Unity engine to date. Just the quality of the materials work, the particle system. It looks like this gorgeous GPU particle system. I mean, when things are on fire, and by the way, again, fire, things start catching on fire, the fire starts to spread. You have a fire extinguisher, you can put it out if you need to. I mean, all of this stuff plays into it. Or like there's like these bounty balls. Like there's this one point where you need to get through a gate. When you pull the lever, there's an enemy up there that then pulls the lever to close, and he does that little, that laugh, like kind of thing that they always did. So to get him, he's somewhere up there. You actually have to like throw these little, there's like these little jawbreaker things that kind of like wrap them up. So first you have to combine bands, like these like trap bands with the ball, and then you can add and remove rubber bands in real time to the thing, and the more rubber bands you add, so if you add one rubber band, it'll bounce once. If you add 15 rubber bands, it bounces 15 times. So you have to get enough bounces on it, bounce it around the environment so it hits the guy, knocks him out, and then you can go platform up there, get him, and you can actually kill him or do whatever you want, and you actually have a whole karma system that updates in real time. So I know it sounds crazy, but it's really, really fun. So, and I didn't expect it to be this interesting.
No, it doesn't sound like when you went in for the meeting, you weren't really sure what you were expecting. Yeah, and then when it came out, you told me that basically it was one of the best games you saw the whole show.
Lauren Lanning was there guiding me through it initially. It's like, he just let me play. Like he's just like, just fiddle around. And then, they kind of walked me through some of the menus and control stuff. But once you get into it, like, it's really good. So that's definitely something to keep an eye out for. Then the other one I want to mention real quick, Psychonauts 2. That was another one I'm really excited about. It really continues the sensations you have in the original game. Like you're going into people's minds and these other worlds, and everything can flip around and change in real time. So like you're trying to, in the demo, you go inside the head of the villain to try to convince him to give up the name of his boss by like, he's in a corporate environment. like cubicles everywhere, and he supposedly wins the Employee of the Month award and has to get it signed by his boss. So like as he starts to figure out what's going on, the whole world starts changing around you. So like you're running down the hallways and they kind of pull back, and then sometimes the wall will go up and you're like platforming off desks, and then you end up in like these weird dental like nightmares, and it's crazy. But so it's running on Unreal Engine 4, and I actually asked Tim and them about that. They're really happy making that switch. They used to work with their own in-house tools. This has helped them prototype faster and like basically test out new ideas. It supports larger environments with more like sort of streaming and everything in it. You've got the central hub this time is sort of like the Psychonauts HQ rather than the campsite, and you kind of go out to the different worlds and different brains from there. And he even said like he had started thinking of a lot of these ideas right after completing the first Psychonauts, but obviously, you know, he also wanted to do his crazy Brutal Legend thing, right? And that was awesome. But this, you know, so these ideas have been around, and now they're all being implemented. And while the familiar characters and all the original voice actors are back, all the places you go are completely new and fresh, and it's exactly what I wanted from Psychonauts, and I'm happy that is there. So another one I guess we should talk about, there's still more, Control from Remedy. I want to briefly mention, I had a chance to sit down with the PC version running with RTX, and this is probably the most impressive RTX implementation I've seen yet, in that it has ray traced reflections, it has ray traced global illumination, it has transparent reflections, and I guess like AO perhaps. So transparent reflections are like if you have a pane of glass that you can see through, you still see the reflections of the stuff behind you as well as through the glass. And then all the pipes and materials, like very realistic reflections all over the place. Sometimes they're diffuse, sometimes, you know, they're shiny depending on the material properties. And this game had the option, at least in this build, to disable and enable RTX by tapping the O button. Okay. So you could actually do in real time swap between the two, and this was a huge difference. And not only that, it ran well. So we were on a 1080p monitor, admittedly, but it was basically a locked 60 FPS with VSync. Even when things were going crazy, for the most part, there's a couple dips here and there, but it was mostly locked 60. And it's the best looking RTX game I've seen yet. Wow, so okay. Even better than that Cyberpunk trailer. Like, I really like what they're doing here, but we'll have to see more of Cyberpunk. So for me, this was probably my favorite E3 experience yet. I never had a better E3. And you know, there wasn't as much showing as usual, but just the amount of people there, and the people we got to meet, and the meetings we went to, and just things were really fun. And I want to say specifically very special thanks to all the people. I had a lot of people come over to say hello and, you know, just chat about games and such, and that was really nice. I really appreciated that. So if you saw me on the show floor and you said hi, thanks very much. I do appreciate it. And, you know, you had some good meetings as well, and everything. Great E3. We should mention, though, you mentioned the amount of people. Yes. And this was a talking point for a lot of people now, that, you know, E3 is dying and all that. I don't think it's that bad, but it was certainly a lot less people this year. Specifically on the last day. The last day was almost empty in some places, except Nintendo, which is always popular. Nintendo was always busy. Right. And by the way, for those wondering, I did play all of Nintendo's games at E3, and I got capture of all of them, which is why I'm going to reserve that for a separate video. Right. Because that's, you know, there's more to it than that. We did have fun, though. We did have a really nice time. Some good surprises there. But I think that about wraps it up. It's been great here filming at Game Realms. It's a really nice shop. It's been great having your help during this whole show. I'm so happy to have joined. And yeah, it's been a great time. So if you did enjoy this video, as always, be sure to like and subscribe. Ring that notification bell up there at the top. And of course, follow us on Twitter. And until next time, this is John and Audi signing off.
Featuring 2.4 GHz wireless, 50mm Pro G audio drivers, and DTS Headphone X 2.0 surround sound technology under the hood, the G935 headset delivers the ultimate wireless audio solution for gamers, whether you're playing on PC, PlayStation 4, Xbox One, Nintendo Switch, or mobile. Order yours today from Logitech G.